Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman, and today we're joined by special guest Day Martin, founder of Swayday, a motion gaming company. And for transparency, Day Martin is also my sister, so I've known her for quite a while, and I totally am not uh, tra- neutral on the subject of how awesome she is. So Day is joining us. She just launched, well, not just launched, she has launched a second game after her first game didn't get a lot of traction. And the important thing for this podcast is she did not do a rewrite or write a whole new second game. She iterated off of the first game to make the second game. So Day, why
hmm
don't you tell us a little bit about that story to kind of set the tone?
Sure. So, as Jeff mentioned, I'm Day Martin. I am a serial entrepreneur. My first startup was called Stand Steady. I invented a standing desk and started selling it on Amazon, and then expanded my product lines. The business that I started was profitable from year one, grew it to over $6 million a year in revenue. We were acquired by a public company. I stayed on, and then with the additional access to capital, was able to grow it up to over $40 million a year in sales before deciding to leave and do something different. So that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of great times doing the e-commerce and product development. Um, and I was like, what should I do now? And this may surprise you, but there are people that spend a lot of time like on their phone, laying on the couch, playing hyper casual games. I'm not going to say who those people are, but that can take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 3 hours. And I was like, what if I could be getting exercise instead of laying on the couch? And so that's where Swayday's initial brainchild came from. I thought, what if we could use the technology that already exists within our phones, our tablets, our computers, to use that camera vision to be able to play active motion games? Kind of like if you remember the old Wii, I'm sure you guys had them. And we
I
actually
did.
sold, they actually sold 100 million copies of that in just a couple years, and Nintendo actually walked away from that audience because they wanted to go after hardcore gamers. And I was like, I think we need to bring that audience back. So I built our initial game, called it Swayday, the company Swayday. The game was Swayday, and you could just play in front of your computer, in front of your phone, waving your hands around. So it's like the Nintendo Wii, but you don't have to buy any hardware. You're just these are your controllers, and you just wave them around, and now you're playing. Um, I thought it made a lot of sense. And when I started to share it with people, they all said they really liked it and thought it would be really good for somebody else. And they would give me examples of who this somebody else was, but it was never them. And no matter how many people I talked to, it really was never for them. A lot of times it was for their kids. And then when I tried pushing, no, you guys, don't you think you spend too much time laying on the couch playing your hyper casual games? They're like, you know who spends too much time? My kids. And you know who likes to play video games? That would be my kids. And then they're like, you know who can see from this far away? They're like, also my kids. Um, so I was like, oh, maybe we should pivot to kids. So we did, we had a bunch of conversations with people and really thought about what is the core market that we're trying to serve. And we pivoted from getting middle-aged people more exercise while they're just kind of moving around and playing their stupid hyper casual games to building an active motion platform to improve educational outcomes for ADHD and neurodiverse kids.
Hmm.
So realizing that there's this huge audience of these ADHD kids out there, including my child. And with my child, when I had to teach her the times tables, getting her to sit there and do the flashcards, she just couldn't do it. I have two kids. So the older one, no problem. The younger one just couldn't sit there and learn the times tables. So we started times tables as our MVP, and we launched a game. It is an augmented reality free game on the App Store where the children can go like this in front of their computers and be doing the multiplication tables. So 3 times 5, go, and they're 6 times 2, go, and they're moving like this. And the response has really been incredible. Um, the kids like it. They like to play. They're really engaged with it, and they really enjoy it. And what they really, when they really enjoy it the most is when I've got to bring it to a school and have a group of them play. And then they are like in love. And you've got them yelling out, it's 35, 35, the five's over there. And the kids are all like, jumping and moving and yelling out equation answers. And, you've got the little characters and the sounds. Um, so that's been the pivot. And I have a co-founder and we're currently working on, talking to more people. We've started a cohort study. We are starting our initial funding round to raise money to build out the platform so that it is more of a platform and not just a one-off game. And when you think about how far we can go with the whole concept of active motion learning, of course people move around to learn. So I could go on for 3 more hours, but I'll
Yeah,
cut it off there. And anyway, the
cool.
base code
Well,
you said.
you should start. You should tell it. What's the name of the?
The game?
Yeah,
The game is on the App Store and it's called Times Tables AR Space Game.
I
Very
have.
catchy.
Yeah, it's a good catchy name. Just like Swayway. Swayway was a good catchy name, but that
Okay,
AR times tables is certainly truth in advertising right there. What's on the
it's
box?
Times Tables AR Space Game. We have considered changing the name. That may happen, but for right now it is, and it is currently only available on the App Store. It's not on Google Play at this moment, but we are working to get it live there.
Okay, awesome. So you had a first one, and you still the fundamental is the same. Of you've got a game, and you're using your controllers. Your hands are your controllers to make it happen, and it's
Yep.
the mechanics of why you're bothering to play this game is what has mostly changed. And
Yep,
so,
that's it exactly. So we are using that same, and it's built on. So it's a Unity game that's pretty standard. It's a standard game engine, and we use OpenCV as our computer vision software.
mhm.
And so all of that configuration, it's literally within the same game structure. It's a copy of the original game, and we just added in the new assets, the sprites, the music, all of the code, but it still sits within that exact same framework. So it is fundamentally built on that old code, which has been great because there was a lot of work that developers had to do, so that you get correct positioning when you're moving your hands. It's a lot of in-depth stuff.
And so, going from the original game to the new game, you said there's a lot of new assets and things. How about was there a lot of new coding that you had to do?
Yeah. So it's it's entirely new code,
Hmm.
uh, where so the OpenCV code, OpenCV is the software that allows you to do the computer vision coding. And they had
Mm-hmm.
coded it so that it would recognize the hand and could recognize when the hand intersects with an object and touches it. And so that piece of the game is kept. But the code around what are you instantiating and what are the collision paths and what does the gravity look like on this and what is being instantiated and what does a correct answer look like all of that is totally fresh. So we're
Hmm.
we're we're using that bit about that hard piece of the computer vision that has been
Mm-hmm.
kept, but the frames are different.
And that's, I mean, I don't know much about Unity, but just guessing that things like gravity are Unity settings. You didn't have to start over with gravity, did you?
Yeah, so Unity is it's a game engine. I'm an Excel user, so if you imagine Excel, it's like the Excel box. Um, and then you're coding. So there's a lot of things where you can pre-program, and then you can go into the C sharp and you can create um, fields that you can then hard code, fields that you could reference within the C sharp, or actually fields that you have then display on the Unity dashboard itself so that you can quickly change the variables or change the variables per page. So our programmer, she was able to take what we had and go into the C sharp and write, they're called scripts, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're always called scripts, but they're called scripts. So she was able to create a bunch of new scripts and copy from some of the scripts, but create these new scripts, and each page has its own script, or can have multiple scripts that it's pulling in. So some of that stuff we kept, and then some of the stuff is new.
For the
Okay.
original idea, what led you to like I know like you got feedback afterwards that people weren't interested. Like they were like, "Oh, this would be great for somebody else."
Mhm.
What led you to build the original version of that? Like, did you have enough people who thought, "Oh, that would be a good idea to get into it," or did you just kind of want to build something and then just pivot from the initial thing that you built?
Yeah, I thought it was a good idea. And when I talked to other people, they thought it was a good idea because it was a good idea for someone else. Mostly,
Mm,
I really believed in the idea. And with my first company, I built it off of my good idea, built it, it worked. I also felt that Nintendo's strong performance with the Wii was a really strong
yeah,
indicator because, like I said, they did sell this 100 million copies.
I was
Everybody
one
bought
of
one,
those
and people
people.
really
I love that
Mhm.
thing.
people,
Yeah.
and that's a crazy thing when you talk about the Wii. And I say, do you remember? I say, do you remember the old Wii? And people are like, it's not really that old. I'm like, yeah, it's from like 100 years ago. They're like, you mean the Wii that we just had a couple of years ago? And people will be like, I still have mine. And everyone says,
I think it was
I
like
loved
20
it.
years ago.
It was a while back. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
15 something. It's been, I mean, I was like, remember a long time ago the Wii, and they're like, it wasn't. But everyone says I loved it, and when you look
Hmm.
at that, there's such a market gap that you have a product that 100 million people bought, and it would cost a couple $100s to buy that thing, and everyone says I loved it, and then it's
Hmm.
gone, and I'm like, there's
Hmm.
this huge hole in the market, and when you tell people about how this same technology can be had just, on your phone, you don't need to buy anything, you already have it, you already have this, you're good to go. Um, People are shocked. So that's the idea really came from just I felt like I like to play my stupid hyper casual games and I
Hmm.
wanted some more exercise and I was like, well, I think a lot of people play super hyper, these stupid games and they all need more
Hmm.
exercise. So I thought it was a really strong fit. But with the kids in the new pivot, one thing that's been really interesting is I've been researching ADHD and I thought, the kids are like going like this all the time and I'm like just they can't sit still and I thought well they can't sit still so they can't learn and it's actually kind of flipped on its head where the research has shown kids actually learn better in motion, especially these ADHD
Hmm.
kids, that
Hmm.
the movement helps with their focus, their executive function, and their retention. So I'm like, it's fine, have them move.
That's a hell of a pivot too. Mostly because like the before is like not educational, and then the after is. So it's like it's just it's a better thing in general. Like morally, I feel like if I like to leave a mark on the world, if I made a fun game, that's one thing because it's like a time sink. But if it's like somebody could take it and actually impacts people's lives and helps them learn something, that's kind of a cool
Hmm.
outcome for something that was initial not as much traction as you hoped. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually like when I look at it, I've had friends who've been like, well, it's not a real pivot. It's within the wheelhouse. And it's a pivot to how we're focusing on it.
Mm.
So when you look at when we initially started the company, we thought, what are all the areas that we could imagine growing into? And it is that hyper casual game. It is education. It's Alzheimer's. And then it's also, because Alzheimer's people don't remember which one is Aunt Joe, which one is a pair of shoes. Where you're getting them to like move and like, you know, practice, get different parts of their brain
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also community, because when you look at the product or the concept, if you can be going like this and interacting, you can imagine like a grandparent and a grandchild. And it's kind of boring sometimes for the 4-year-olds to talk to their grandparent. But if they can be playing a game, the 4-year-old's like, ah, and they're just
Yeah.
playing their little game, and the grandparent can be like, oh, yes, that's such a great purple giraffe. Or, they're getting to be interacting together. Or you can
Hmm.
imagine that two people are actually playing together remotely, something like even a more mature game like two college kids that are just in different colleges and they're playing some sort of game together. So there's a lot of opportunity when you say like when you look at what the platform could be. And then I started on one piece and I was like, we're going to start on this other piece. And if we never get to the other ones, that's okay too. Like you mentioned, it's the education is so important and it's so huge when you start to think, like I've watched people's eyes kind of go when they start to think what you could do when you start really harnessing the power of this computer vision on the devices we already own.
Yeah. I mean, that's way back when you started. That's what really sold me was the idea of, oh, we're going to make this game platform with the computer vision because I remember I had like the Xbox Connect that was great,
Mhm.
and it's the same thing. And you used to have to buy a whole Xbox and the Connect and everything else, and now you can just do it all on your phone.
Yeah, I think we had to connect too.
And one thing I want to bring back, so you're a founder and you weren't a programmer. You're basically you're at the level of a junior programmer now, sort of. In
No,
the
I am
for
a
Unity.
certified Unity junior programmer. It's on my LinkedIn. I
Yes,
earned that.
Excellent.
I like,
you
yeah,
got the badge.
yeah, it's like 3 badges.
But what I want to go with is you're a founder and you didn't have the technical skills, and so you
Yeah.
hired a development company in I think India, but it doesn't really matter.
Yep, India.
And you had them iterate on building this game, and I know that you had a lot of trouble holding them back to do the iterations so that you could get versions of this game out that people could play with.
Hmm.
And so you were able to keep the costs fairly well constrained, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you are willing to talk about those.
Yeah, I think it
Where
cost us about 45 or 50,000 to build the original MVP.
which seems fairly small for hiring a team of developers and building a game that got far enough along that you knew not to continue building this game.
Yeah,
Which
when I've gone out there in the gaming world and the startup world, people are like, "Wow, you got something live. That's pretty far down the road."
It is.
right, you got software, you got a game out for $45,000, and you had enough reserve because you were iterating and you were releasing quickly that you were able to say, "Oh, well, this game isn't going to work, and I'm going to pivot." And now you've got your second game out, which is getting some traction, and you still had runway. And I
Mhm.
think that's a huge part of our message of if you'd gone all the way down, if you had a polished version of the game and it flopped or didn't get traction, you probably would have been done.
Right. If I'd spent 200,000 on this first game and brought it out and
Yeah.
it had all the bells and whistles and it didn't have the M in the MVP, yeah, that would have been a problem. And one of the things that they say in the gaming startup world is if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you waited too long to launch.
Well, I liked that you believed in yourself for the initial idea, but and because your first company was so successful, and you're like, okay, I know my ideas are good, but you also believed people's feedback enough to not believe in yourself so much to keep running down a path that was not going to work. That's I feel like a lot of people really, really believe in their ideas to the point like your opinion's wrong. No, my idea's good. Nobody likes my product because they're all bad. The fact that you're
Yeah,
willing to listen and change is that's a great that kept it surviving probably.
and I think part of all of this is being an experienced manager. I think if I'd been younger in my career, like if I were 23 and just a year or two into having a real job, I think it would have looked very different. When I was managing the team in India, we had a lot of communication problems,
Mm.
and we had calls where I tried to get them to understand, and then we started having calls where I'm like, we have a communication problem. Here's how we're going to resolve the communication problem, and we could not resolve the communication problem, and just realizing, okay, as a manager, you've done everything you can, work with what you have, bring the project to a get the close the scope to as
Hmm.
much as you need to close it to get it done. Because if I had not done that, what I built was not what I initially intended to build. We weren't going to get there with the communication issues. It was switch vendors or what I did, I thought made sense. I'm like, close scope so you can get something released and then you can go
Mhm.
find another vendor, but I need to get this project
Yeah.
closed. And if I had been less experienced, this would have dragged on for 2 more years and another 50 or $100,000. And I think with listening to other ideas, that's, I agree, an important thing too. And what was funny after my first one didn't get the traction I wanted, I was like, people didn't like it. It was a dumb idea. And people are like, well, I don't think it was a dumb idea. I think there was a lot of merit. And so not only was I listening when people said this doesn't work, when I was like, there's really nothing here. There's nothing here. And people were like, no, I think there really is something here. And people really, um, around me kept saying, there really is something here. I don't really think you should just be walking away from it. So I got a lot of really positive encouragement from a lot of people. I'm big into the startup community in DC, so frequently going to events and talking to people, and they're like, "Yeah, really, you're just going to walk away from that? There was a lot going on." So that helped me really refocus and reinvigorate with the project.
Well, a side thought on that is like I did enjoy like when we talk about like the success of the Wii or the Wii Fit. Or I assume you meant Wii Fit particularly because
Yeah,
that's the one I played a lot. The I know the platform went away, but they still have the new Wii Fit Sports for or the Wii Sports for uh, the refreshed model, or at least the last Switch model. So a lot of the balance stuff you could do that transferred to like just whatever you could do with the two sticks, you know. So I think like even now like I'll play like tennis with my little cousin, you know. And so some of the active things you still like Nintendo still has a little bit of maybe the things that were the most successful like the bowling and the tennis, some other things that kind of get you up and moving, and maybe they just kind of went away from the other things. And then the sword, you know, like I forget the name of that
yeah.
art.
I mean,
Yeah.
what they really looked at, they made a decision to go with those really low res graphics, you know, like those wee people that are a little blobby, uh,
Yeah.
and the hardcore gamers just really hated it.
Hmm.
And it made sense because you have to like lower the graphic pull, right? Like for these blobby
Right. It was
things
cheap
because you're moving
hardware.
around, and and that's not what their hardcore audience that they focused on really didn't want these crappy graphics. And the real difference was if you look at me, like I'm not a gaming bro, like I'm not a, you know, 16 to 28 or 35-year-old male. Um, so I'm not worried about, you know, multiplayer shooter games, and I'm not worried about that rapid refresh and those tiny little graphics. I'm like, I'm totally fine with blobby people. Let's play silly little games and do math problems. Um, which is where I think it's so exciting that I can look at something where they've been so successful, but it wasn't the market they wanted, and I'm looking at that and saying that is actually the market I want. I think there's a lot of kids we can help out there.
Right. It may not have been a big enough market for Nintendo, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, but it's certainly big enough that you could have dozens of million-dollar, tens of millions of dollar companies in that space.
I think it was a really interesting choice that they made. I don't think it's not the choice I would have made if I were them. I think what would have made sense is I get that that's not where they wanted to go with their brand. And they were very clear. This is not what we want as our brand. We are not Nintendo for everybody's mom to play with. We are Nintendo for hardcore gamers, and that's who we are, and that's who we want to be. But I think there was a real opportunity for them to have spun that off as a second company that was
Hmm.
for that other audience that was branded, and so that they didn't degrade their brand, but they still could have leveraged their technology. But that's not what they wanted.
It's not what they wanted.
And when you're your own company, you get to decide what you want.
Yes, that is how capitalism works. Awesome. Day, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about Swayday, how would they do that?
Yeah, they can. Our website is swayday.com, and they can reach out to me at dmartin@swayday.us.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming today.
Thank
Thanks,
you so much,
guys. Really
Day.
enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.